Welcome everyone to this important video, and it is time right now to update you on the situation in Europe, specifically in Germany, because what is happening right now in Germany is nothing short of a huge revolution. So let's dive right into it. You will like it, and I promise you it's very, very interesting. So what is happening in Germany is there was an election very recently, and in this election we had very interesting results. And these results are the following. These are the results of the parties. This is by the New York Times. They updated it nice with changes. So you had a coalition of the Greens, the SPD, and the FDP. Very quickly, I just give you a quick rundown. The Greens are green. They're the woke party. They are hyper woke. We will get to this in a second. The SPD are socialists, basically social democrats. And the FDP are libertarians, also a little leftist. Then we have the communists, die Linke, the former party of the communist dictatorship of East Germany. Very funny that they're still around. You have the Christian Democrats. These are the Republicans of Germany. And then you have the Trumpers, kind of, the AfD, the Alternative for Germany, that are also technically conservative or right-wing as the CDU. But they are more positioned against all of these people and say you're all the same because you are basically corrupted. So it's not just right-wing, it's also opposition to the old parties. And you see the previous election results here from 2021 and how they changed to 2025. And what you see is that the coalition of the old government, the Greens, the SPD, and the FDP, got completely destroyed. Hey, creating these videos is a lot of work. Please like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. Now let's get back to the video. So Greens down from 14.7 to 11.6. The Social Democrats, complete distraction, the worst result since the war. The FDP out of the parliament. They're not even allowed to enter that anymore, under 5%. And you see everyone else is super up. Like even the communists are 5% to nearly 9%. So that's up, whatever, 80%. The CDU from 24%, which was the disaster result, up to 28%. And the AfD 100% up. 100% up. That's a lot, from 10% to 20%. So that was the election results. In short, the German electorate basically said, screw you. We had enough of your crazy politics. They basically shut down Germany's energy. They want to go to war against Russia. These people are nuts. It's a left wing. And they, of course, want even more open borders, even though migrant crime in Germany is truly out of control, to an extent that even the normies are now angry and scared. And the young generation, especially young girls, but also young guys, they are the most right-wing thing ever, because if they want to go to a swimming pool or they want to go out at night, they just get harassed and raped and killed with knives. So the young people are getting very political and very right-wing because they're literally getting murdered in the streets when they want to go out. It's really bad. As Americans, you don't even understand how bad this is. Americans can't even imagine this, because it could never happen in America. This level of harassment and violence against the population by migrants, unimaginable. In the United States, for example, if you have migrant crime, it's more like not really affecting you. You hear it's like gang crime and some drugs, but it's not a pervasive problem that every high schooler in America says, of course, I can't go out at night. I get killed by migrants. Unthinkable in America, because people would, they would do something about it. In Europe, this is happening. So long story short, when the election happened, we saw this giant shift and we saw a new parliament, right? And the parliament looked like this now. You have the black, this is basically the CDU, the Republicans of Germany. You see the new party, the Alternative for Germany, which is technically also conservative right-wing, but more alternative to everyone. And then you have the leftists here. And the leftists are totally the minority now. So if you see that, and you also consider that these two parties, the new blue one and the old black one, have basically identical programs, with the exception of the things that relate to war, Russia, and the European Union. They are, overlapping a lot technically on immigration, on taxes, on all kinds of things. They only have disagreements about the European Union, where the blue ones say, screw the European Union, we need major reforms because they are the problem. Whereas the CDU is completely ingrained and embedded into this and says, no, these are our people. We want to protect the bureaucracy because we are part of it and we get paid for it. And Russia, of course, the CDU, for many reasons I will go into in a different video, wants also war because that's good for BlackRock. And whereas these people say, are you nuts? We don't want to go to war with Russia. So that's the disagreement, but there's much more agreement, at least in theory, on paper, because the CDU says they are against mass immigration because they claim to be conservatives, but they are the ones under Merkel that opened Germany's borders and destroyed the country. So they're just lying flat out. But technically on paper, they are in agreement with the AfD. But what actually happened after this election with this new parliament was what I described in my other video as a coup. There was literally an effective financial and fiscal coup where the guy who got basically elected on the black side here, Friedrich Merz, who's going to be the new chancellor of Germany, said, you know what? Screw these blue people. We have a firewall. They made it up. So all these people here, these guys and these guys, they made up this so-called firewall against the blue guys because the blue guys are new. They want to actually change the country and actually close the borders and actually do something for the population. So these so-called right-wingers formed like a kind of plan with the left-wingers and said, you know what, left, right, who cares? We all want open borders. We all want war. Let's shut these new ones out and call them Nazis, because that always helps. So that's called their firewall. And even though the German voter clearly voted for a combination of these and these guys to form a coalition, the German voter clearly said, I want a conservative government and stop the madness. The CDU said, screw the voters. We are going to form a coalition with the red ones, which is nuts, especially given the fact that the red ones are the ones that got punished the most. The voters literally said, get these people out of government. Get them out. Look at the drop. Now, these guys won because they said, we are completely different from these loser government people. We are going to create a fiscally conservative, responsible government, close the borders, bring law and order back to Germany. The voters said, sure, we vote for you because you promise us no debt, closed borders, stop the madness. We just vote for the AfD even more because they say the same thing, but we believe them a little bit more than you, but you both win. These guys, after they won, turn around, next thing you know, say, oh, we actually go together with these guys, not with these guys, because these guys actually agree with us secretly, or we agree with them because we have a bad plan for Germany. So they did this, and immediately, before it's too late, they only had 4 weeks after the election, called in the de-elected parliament. So these guys said, oops, very interesting, we are forming a coalition with these guys, but we want to do some major things here with Germany. The exact opposite of what we promised, because Friedrich Merz promised, for example, to stop all the debt and stop the crazy spending plans of the left, because he is a fiscally conservative, he says. So once he was elected, he had 4 weeks or something around that time to use the old parliament that just got kicked out. We had the last 4 weeks of the old parliament to still push through some votes. And he said, oh, I should use that opportunity because I actually break all the promises I made, especially my number one promise in the election, that I will stop the debt. I will turn around right after I'm elected and use these last 4 weeks of the old government to abuse that old government to vote for the biggest debt increase in history that Germany ever had. $1 trillion in additional debt. So that looks like complete treason to anyone who looks at it. Not in the illegal sense. I'm not saying they're doing illegal treason stuff. I'm saying in common sense words, this is treason to your own voters. You promise one thing, and then you literally the minute you got elected, you turn around, you form a coalition with your worst people, with the leftists, and then do the exact opposite by pushing through a constitutional change to create the biggest debt trap in history. So, okay, you would think, well, this is a pretty stunning to do that. So they did it, they succeeded, right? Here are the headlines. Bundestag prepares to vote on historic borrowing package in key test for Merz. It's truly a key test for the chancellor candidate who promised, I will stop the spending. And the hour he got elected, turns around, goes to the left, is like, by the way, we have 4 weeks time to use the old parliament, with the majorities we had in the old parliament, to quickly get through a constitutional change for the German constitution to remove die Schuldenbremse, debt break, so we can go nuts on spending. I will have another video what's behind that, because this guy also is a BlackRock guy, not just a random BlackRock guy, a hardcore BlackRock guy. And if you know anything about BlackRock, there's one thing they love, and that is pushing countries into debt. Because who do you borrow from? From BlackRock. So one of BlackRock's tricks is to go to countries and make sure these countries do extremely stupid things, push them into debt, so BlackRock can sell trillions of dollars worth of treasuries, or buy them and get the interest from you, the people. This is a whole different video I'm going to do once he's elected, which is probably in 2 weeks or something. So he did that, but guess what happened next? I tell you the whole story. That's why you're here. Hey, if you want to stay ahead of politics everywhere, join us in Pioneerlands. We track politics, capital markets, and AGI disruption. It's free and self-organized for people who look through the noise and deception. Link in the description. Let's get back to the video. So what happened next is that the German people this time, even though I have my criticism of the German public, but this time they got really pissed. This was just too much, even for obedient German voters who say, you know what, I'm a little sheep. You can abuse me. You can take my money. You can even harass my daughter and kill them. It's fine. I'm like the British, same thing, and the French. If you want to do it to me, it's your right, because you're the rulers and I'm just a little peasant. So that's normally the attitude of most Germans, but not of 20% of Germans who voted for the AfD. And so now the Germans who are not into that obedience mode got a little pissed. And some of them were even CDU voters. And so what's happening now, the latest survey that comes out, the latest poll, we see dramatic developments. The AfD is now the largest, strongest party in Germany, not by a little bit. They went up from here, from 20% just a few weeks ago in February to 26%, and the CDU is down from 28 point something percent to 25. So in other words, end of February at the election, the CDU had an 8% lead over the AfD. That lead has now been reduced to -1%. The CDU is not the biggest party anymore in the polls. The AfD is now Germany's #1. And if you know anything about German politics, or for that matter, European politics, look at France, Le Pen, look at, Reform at UK, to have one of these, new parties, one of these new alternatives on the right and conservative side of things, to become the #1 in the most important country by a far distance in Europe. Germany is the central country in Europe. Whatever Germany does, Europe has to do. So it is very, very important what's happening here. And that is a seismic shift in culture. And I said it back then that the 20% hurdle for the AfD is very decisive, because under 20%, you have the usual fringe guys like me and everyone who's very well informed, well read, and thinks a lot about politics, that can push you under certain circumstances to 10% if you're lucky towards 20. But you cannot go over 20% in a big country like this if you don't reach the mainstream. And the fact that they hit 20% at the election told me, okay, now we are cooking, because now Germans have woken up to the reality that they are being abused, and that these are all lies against the AfD that they're hearing, that they are radical right-wingers and stuff like that, which is completely untrue. The AfD was founded by a bunch of economics professors who were unhappy about the euro. It wasn't even right-wing. So very interesting that the German people are really waking up now at a critical mass. So this is non-trivial. This is not like hopeful thinking. We are talking about 26%. We are talking now about the largest party in Germany. That will change a lot of things, because people in the CDU get very nervous. You also have to understand that while the leadership of the CDU were absolute traitors, like Merkel was the one who destroyed Germany with her insane open border strategy, and Merz is owned by BlackRock, but the normal CDU guys, right? The CDU members, party members, like in a random little village or town in Germany, they're not bad people. They are normal conservatives. They want law and order. They don't want to sell out their own people to some asset manager. They don't want to send their young sons into a war against Russia. They don't like all that stuff. And they tend to be, well-grounded people. So they are getting nervous and saying, wait, what's even happening? Why is this guy who's our boss, Merz, why is he selling us out like that? And they're hearing the AfD having all the arguments, and they're seeing more and more new media and influencers. They see all the young people coming to them. It's one thing to be Merz and sell your country out. It's another thing to be a small town CDU member and see your youth and your own children, being harassed and like threatened by migrants. And I tell you, people, you have to go to Europe to see what I'm saying. It's insane what's happening. So, they have their own doubts. And we saw entire groups of CDU members in small towns quitting the party. There's a lot of things happening here. So this is all very interesting. And I think we are looking at a major, major, major development. But of course, what we also see is that things get more dramatic and heated because these guys here, everyone outside the blue party, they are trying to link up. The interesting thing is, and I will get to this at the end of the video, because there will be a cultural commentary here that most people are not aware in Germany, about Germany, who are not Germans. These guys have something in common with the blue ones. And I will get to this in a second. But these guys and these guys and these guys, the green, red, and black guys, they are very in bed with each other. They are completely the encrusted, like old sclerotic, treacherous elites. They are all pretending they have some ideologies. I mean, the Greens are truly a little woke, but they all agree, let's make BlackRock rich. Let's push Germany into debt. Let's do some wars, and let's keep the borders open and the population confused. Your usual program. So these three are totally in bed with each other on that. And then they're pretending they're left and right. Whereas the blue ones are completely out of that game. And the red ones are also not playing along here, these pink ones. So what's happening now is that these guys here, red, green, and black, they have this insane plan, some of them, to try to make the AfD illegal, which would be, a step into civil war in Germany, obviously, right? If the courts would be insane enough to make the biggest party in Germany illegal, that would be nuts. So I don't think they're going to succeed, but these people are pushing for it, led by the CDU, by some of the CDU guys, but they are, of course, forming a block with the red ones and the green ones and say, why don't we just make them illegal and the problem goes away? I mean, think about that. You must be nuts to even think that. What do you think 30% soon of the population is going to say if you say, we make it illegal what you guys do? We don't want you in democracy. You're too many people. You have to get out. Insane. At the same time, the AfD is also getting into gear, and they have a very funny thing going on here, but that tells you that, lawfare is becoming a real thing in Germany. So the AfD is now also preparing a lawsuit against the Greens that I find very entertaining, because I don't see how the AfD is not going to win this. At the same time, it's very hard to conceive of them winning, because that would be also a revolution. So they're suing the Green Party because the Greens did something you won't even believe, that I didn't know of. I just learned about this recently. So the Greens, because they are a woke cult, some would say a death cult, but that's a different topic, but they are woke. If you think you know woke, take the worst Democrats and multiply them by 10, then you know what the Greens are. I mean, they're a full-on cult. And so what they did is they had a rule in the election for their internal candidates. And that rule was the most blatant, insane discrimination you can imagine. They basically said there is a woman quota, okay? Of course, it's already illegal, but here's the woman quota they had. We need to have at least half of all our candidates on a certain state level to be women. And if not, you just can't run. You're not allowed to if you're a man. You can have more than half women, but you can never have more than half men. So if you basically have candidates, you need two, and you have 2 men and 2 women running, and one of the men wins, it's already game over, right? The women have to win. And there is something in the German constitution that talks about equality and things like that, right? And equal rights. So you can't just discriminate people in a democracy. You can't prevent them from voting, but you also cannot prevent them from running. You cannot say, oh, you're black, you're not allowed to be a candidate. That would be illegal under the German constitution. We don't allow women to run. You know, you can be the best woman in the world, you are not allowed to run. That would be illegal too. Pretty clearly illegal. And it would also be illegal to say, you are white, you're not allowed to run, or you are a man, you're not allowed to run. But when you look at the exact provision of what the Greens did, they said exactly that. You're a man, you're out. So the AfD is now suing them and say because of that, they want to make the election results not count from February for the Greens. So that is very interesting because if you invalidate the Green election results, you have to invalidate the entire election results, and then you need new elections. If you would get a new election in Germany, the AfD would win, and then the whole thing is, it's crazy. Then it's over. And then we would look at a crazy situation. So on one side of the equation, you would say they have no chance of winning this because that would just be nuts. On the other side, if you read the law, how are they not going to win it? It goes straight to the Supreme Court, right? Because this is a constitutional question. They have the first step where they put a complaint in with the election officials, and then it continues to the Supreme Court. And I don't see exactly how they not win this, because the Greens completely violated the constitution. Basically, they used rules to put up their candidates. They were anti-democratic and anti-constitutional. So what are you going to do? You have to invalidate it. So what I'm saying here, I don't know how this, I have no predictions. This is very political. Legally, it's pretty clear the Supreme Court has to rule in favor of the AfD, but these are all politicians of the CDU and SPD. So the kind of the Democrats and Republicans sitting on the Supreme Court. So they could just say, screw you, AfD, we don't care. But that's also tough to do, right? They have to adhere to the constitution a little bit. I don't know what the outcome will be. Maybe they find some hack or trick, like procedural things to kick it out, but it's going to be difficult. And also the Germans, think about them whatever you want. There is a certain democratic base understanding baked in. If a party has 26%, is the largest party in Germany, you have to take them a little more seriously. Even the media is now inviting them more and say, we can't just keep ignoring these people who are totally the majority of the people now. So that is very interesting. Let's see what happens. But you see on both sides, they're ramping up the lawfare, which is a bad sign. Same in the United States. So we have a heated situation. And I want to conclude this with a cultural commentary and historic commentary for all you guys, maybe even in Germany. Lots of Germans don't know that either. But if you're in Australia or Canada, lots of viewers, of course, the majority of you guys are in America. Many are in the UK. You might find that interesting what your fellow Germans do there. But especially for the Americans, very interesting. All this is not normal for Germany. Germany is not Italy, where you constantly have imploding governments. Germany only had 3 special federal elections since 1945, since the end of the Second World War. So normally you have orderly, every 4 years you have an election. Only 3 times in the entire history since the Second World War did you have an exception to that. This election was also an exception because the government was becoming unstable. So we are already in an unstable situation. The high instability is being fueled by X, by alternative media, by the lies of the current media being exposed on a completely new level. And even, especially the Swiss and Austrian media, German-speaking media outside Germany, they're not playing along with the German media cartel that lies systematically to the German people. The Swiss and the Austrians don't play along. And that's bad because Germans understand German. They can just watch Austrian TV or they can watch Swiss TV and they're saying, what's going on in Germany? So the Germans get more and more truth here. They get more and more perspectives. Then X comes along, new influencers, especially young people, they're starting to tell the truth. The whole thing is crumbling. At the same time, I know I sound like a bad guy who doesn't like immigrants. Which is funny because my dad is an immigrant. And it's also funny because the head of the AfD lives in Switzerland, is married to I think a non-German. Some of the most important AfD politicians like Anna Ningen is Vietnamese. So this is not about immigrants. It's about the facts on the ground that you have lots of African and Middle Eastern migrants who are low IQ not because they're African or Middle Eastern. They are very smart people in these countries, but for some reason, Europe only takes in the low IQ savages. That's very dumb and bad. And you just see the devastation on the streets. And you see these are not isolated incidents. Sometimes I get the impression in the United States, even though I'm not downplaying the problems with migrants in the United States, with illegals, but it's really not the majority of illegal migrants in the United States who are criminals. It's very different in Europe. These are scumbags, too many of them. I see it in my environment with my friends. It's really bad news. And not saying it makes you a problem, because you are promoting bad things that are happening to your fellow citizens. So the economy and debt abuse is ridiculous. So people feel these things, and that's really hitting the mainstream population. And the critical mass has been reached, 20% AfD, that's interesting. So this is an unstable situation. And I want to also point something out that is a little mean to my European friends, but I will have to say it because I know Americans very well. I know Europeans very well, Europeans especially know British and especially Germans and some Scandinavians pretty well. And what's happening, what I'm always found surprising with Germans and the other Europeans, I hate to say it, but I have to be a little harsh here. Europeans were raised and trained to be peasants, to be subordinate, to be obedient. They have been trained to do so, to be that for thousands of years or hundreds of years. That is very different from Americans. And if you're European, you might get pissed at me now. Maybe you're an aristocrat and you think that's fine. We have to oppress these people. You're the ruling class, but the ruling class is very thin. It's not many. But when you talk to people on the ground, there is a very, very different understanding of who owns the country and who owns the rights to something. In America, because you had a revolution in America, and it's baked into the DNA of the country and the democracy, every American, not the Democrats necessarily, but most Americans have this understanding. It's their country. It doesn't matter how much money you have or whatever. You are allowed to have guns. You have a First Amendment. If there's a tyrant coming along and says, you know what, give me your children, give me your money, give me your house, you think, wait, that's not okay. Maybe I have to shoot you, which is natural. That's how it should be. But in Europe, they say, well, if the state says they want my children in my house, what am I going to do? I have to comply. It's the law, right? And that is a bad thing, because we need to change that. We need to get into a position where it's like, okay, you have certain God-given rights. You own that stuff. Your children are yours. Your body is yours. Your property is yours. And no one has the right to ever take it under any circumstance. And if that ever it doesn't matter if it's a law or not. No one cares about the law. You care about your God-given rights. And if someone crosses the line into your God-given rights, they turn from someone into a tyrant. And what you do with tyrants is you dispose of them. Every American knows that. That's like baseline truth. And if you are a ruler in America, you understand I have to be a little cautious, because if I become a tyrant, it might end very badly, because the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and the populace understands what the rule is. Trump is our employee. He's voted, and he knows that. Trump knows he's the employee of the American people. He would not cross the line, and even Obama and these people, they knew it. In Europe, it's very different. The culture is very different. And that leads to these horrendous situations where, look at Sweden, look at France, look at Germany, where you do horrible things to the population. Look to the UK, where you had these rape gangs, Pakistani rape gangs. And, in what was it in Sweden? 250,000 Swedish girls have been raped, and things like that, by the vast majority by migrants. This would not fly in America, I tell you, would not fly. But there, people think, well, we need to be compliant. It's just my daughter. What am I going to do? It's like back in the days, if the king wants to get your daughter, what are you going to do? You have to deliver to the king. I think it's horrible, and this has to change. And now I want to conclude this with a very important twist to that story, because that is the story. I know many people in the United States, and I know many people in Europe This is a fundamentally different perspective on life. And even if the Europeans now scream maybe and say, ooh, this is not fair, think about it. You are compliant to the state. And that's just not okay. You have to change your attitude. You cannot be compliant to the state. The state has to be compliant to you. You are the boss. They are your employees. If they cross the line, they get fired. If they get violent, worse things should happen to them. These are the rules. The people must be in power. It's called democracy. Everything else, non-acceptable. So that is my criticism of Europeans. But here's the thing. Of course, you always have a share of Europeans who don't play along, the 10%, the famous 10%. And that's the hope of Europe. And what's happening in Germany with the AfD is we are already at 20%, now we are at 26%. And I want to point out something very interesting that is a revealing thing. Revealing. Because Americans used to be Europeans. What happened to them? They had a revolution. They learned the lesson. And they didn't play along anymore, and they created their own little country. Here is something you have to see in Germany. This is where the majority vote landed at in the last election. And you see, here are the blacks and some reds, and here are clearly the blues. Now that looks a little weird. Doesn't that look a little weird? That is a very clean cut. You would expect like a patchwork or something. Why is it all black on the left side and all blue on the right side? What is this left and right? Well, this border is the border of former East Germany and former West Germany. And Berlin was West Germany, by the way. So, or half of Berlin. So that is very surprising, and that gives us a very important insight. And that important insight is there is an enormous cultural difference between East Germans and West Germans. West Germans are still in the peasant mode. They are still compliant, little obedient citizens. They think it's not, I have no say in this, I just do what I'm being told. The media tells me to not vote for the AfD, so I'm not going to vote for the AfD. If my children get abused and harassed and raped and everything, well, then I have to vote for the CDU, even though they opened the borders, because they're currently not in charge. So let's try to switch back to the people who opened the borders. Maybe they're better than the left-wingers, even though that's highly stupid to think. Whereas in the East, the people think, wait a moment. All these people are total traitors. They lied to us, all of them. We should maybe vote for the people who so far didn't have the chance to lie to us because they weren't in charge. That's our only hope. So they all vote AfD. Now the media cartel tells the East Germans, you're all Nazis because you vote for the Nazi party. These are Nazis. But the people in East Germany say, well, why would I believe you that they're Nazis? When I listen to them, they don't say anything Nazi-wise, and their boss is a lesbian who lives in Switzerland, with a dark-skinned wife. You telling me that these are Nazis makes no sense. Also, a lot of their representatives are foreigners. They're Asians or something. Why is a Nazi party led by lesbians who are married to dark-skinned wives and who have a lot of Asians and whatever in their party? That is just inconclusive what you're saying. It makes no sense. So they're just voting AfD and they're not listening. So why is that? And why is this so important for Europe? When you talk to the Aussies, they talk Aussies and Westies for Ost Germany and West Germany. It's very interesting when you think through, what actually happened to them, to this part of Germany. First of all, historically, I can do more if you want. Just let me know in the comments if you find this kind of history interesting. I don't want to go too deep into it. But first of all, there's a historic angle that people forget. It's not just East and West, and they were communist and these were Western. I will get into this in a second. But it's also historically true that these areas, Prussia and Saxonia, so basically this is the West Prussia and Saxonia traditionally. These were the big guys in Germany, plus Bavaria, but the biggest were the Prussians, the second biggest the Saxonians. They made all the money and the art. The Prussians made the big power empire, and then the Bavarians were the little kingdom, and the rest were just peasants. No insult here, but peasants and merchants, right, in Hamburg and Cologne and stuff. That's historically what happened to Germany. So the big power players, the big picture global people were here and here. So that's very interesting to know historically. But then they were also trapped in a communist country. And if you know anything about East German communism, that was pretty bad. With the Stasi, they were lying day and night. They had like totally lying media and propaganda. And everyone knew it in the East. They just couldn't do anything. And then they overthrew them, more or less, right, peacefully. And they have this chant in the demonstrations, we are the people. Wir sind das Volk. We are the people. Westies would never say that. We are not the people. We can't do anything. But the Aussies say we are the people, because they insist like this. If you call this a democracy, we want to be in charge. We are the people. You can't just order us around and take everything from us and open our borders and kill our kids in war or through migrants. It's just wrong. And I don't care what you tell us. You are liars. So the Aussies are actually much better trained by history to not do these things, because they have done it before. They have seen it all before. They were lied to, abused. They built a wall around them. They shot them when they wanted to leave. Stupid communism. And the Aussies have had it. And they have also learned that you can live in a state where everything is a lie. And they learned, if we stand up as the people, we bring down these mofos and overthrow this thing. And they have seen an entire state that seemed overly powerful, almighty, in how they oppressed them, crumble before their eyes. I think that shapes people. And I think that East Germans have a much better awareness of democracy. They have a much better awareness of the power of the people. And they are much more educated in media criticism. They understand lies, and they see lies when they see them. So they understand what lies are. So it's much harder to fool them, both historically and recent history-wise in their own experience. And that is why all that propaganda fails in East Germany, but succeeds in West Germany. And here's the thing. It's not that West Germans are stupid or anything. They are highly intelligent people all over the place. It's an attitude problem. I have many friends in West Germany, and I can tell when I talk to them, it's like, oh, we are not in charge. Like, whatever, the government says it. How can you speak up to the government? And that's a very different attitude. So East Germany is the big hope for this whole situation, because it makes a difference if you have states now that are actually majority AfD, not just 26%, but majority, like they're going through an absolute majority. And that will put the AfD in charge. That will be very interesting to watch. And that will create examples that everyone else can see. It's like, wait, why are we not just cleaning up our country? It seems to be possible. And here's the interesting thing. As you know, I have the total conviction that where Germany goes, Europe goes. Europe cannot get liberated and fixed without Germany getting liberated and fixed first. And it needs to get liberated from the inside by its own people. And so the Aussies, the East Germans, might be the thing, the domino that cleans up all of Europe. That is my takeaway for today. I think it's incredibly interesting what's happening in Germany. I think it was healthy that these two lived in separation for a while, so you have some real diversity here. And it's going to be super interesting to watch this. I can't wait what happens next, but I have kind of a good feeling about these trends. I would not assume that the next election is in 2029. We are living through the age of AGI, massive transformation. Companies like Tesla will be bigger than the entire German economy very soon. And it's time to clean up the countries, make them governed by the people and for the people, get all these people out, and I mean mostly the elites, out of office, who are abusing and distorting power structures in democracies. And I hope Germany can lead by example. Most people don't expect it, but I think we are on a good way here. I hope that was interesting. Let me know which pieces of that are more interesting or less interesting. I can do much more about these things. And we will cover next on the politics side in Germany what happens to the chancellor and the whole role BlackRock plays in this, which is pretty shocking once you see what's actually happening. So I hope you enjoyed that. See you next time.